All right. Uh, I must apologize in advance because I am in Oklahoma, and one of the upsides of being up here in such a rural area and hunting here is there's no Wi-Fi or internet anywhere. So you have to drive an hour into town. So I'm sitting outside of a coffee shop now, next to a road, not inside the coffee shop, so as not to bother anyone. So if there's wind or noise, or if you don't hear something on the page, I'm going to ask that you ask me to repeat something if need be. But I'm going to go ahead and get my screen shared to the presentation. Hopefully everything comes up totally fine. So yes, I did hike the Appalachian Trail. It was quite a wild ride. It was a good time. I am McKay, yes, and my trail name was Lil Otter. And we'll get into trail names and all of that, all the different traditions and things on the AT. But first, just what is it? There's a lot of just information about the AT. It's almost 2,200 miles. It's like 2193 somewhere in there if you want to get technical. It was completed in 1937, but it changes on a year-to-year basis as it's grown and morphed over the years. It sometimes there will be road walks, and then instead of taking that road, the trail will be rerouted to go up a mountain instead of on the road, which the road walk would be easier, but the mountains are kind of why you're out there. It's maintained by various volunteers and government agencies, different volunteer agencies, the ATC, different not corporations, but different groups, and things run it. It can take several months to complete. There's, I don't know what the absolute fastest known time is right now, but as little as 2 or 3 months to as much as 7 months, you're kind of limited by when Baxter State Park is open and things like that. But of the people that all get on and attempt it through bike, there's roughly a 20% completion rate, give or take, and the vast majority of people that end up getting off, it's normally because they run out of money or they get injured. It doesn't really matter what kind of shape you're in. You're always at risk for injury. You could be Neil Armstrong out there, and then you could easily just twist an ankle or hyperextend a knee, and then you're toast. So you got to be mindful of that. The AT's a lot of up and down, a lot of elevation change. It's enough elevation change to go up Mount Everest 16 times, which is pretty impressive. And then the ATC is the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. They kind of run things and keep track of the numbers and all of that. They believe, and we believe, that 2021 was the largest year for thru hiking to date since the conception of the AT. And that's over the decades, it's gotten more and more trafficked. But this year in particular, it's so trafficked because some people who were going to hike last year, the ATC recommended and said, don't hike, there's a pandemic going on, stay home, do what you need to do there. So people who want to do it last year did it this year. People who were going to do it this year that, did it this year, or people who got put in some kind of a circumstance from last year during the pandemic that put them in a situation where they were able to hike this year. So some kind of change in job or school, things like that. And anybody can answer this question. How many people do you think have thru hiked the AT since 1937? Does anybody know? Let's take a crack at it.
20,000?
How many?
20,000?
Wow, very, very good. Yes, 20,000, give or take, something like that. Obviously, in the 70s and stuff, it depends on your gear and everything, how, gear changes throughout the years. It's lighter, efficient, blah, 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 so now it's getting more and more people, but yeah, about 20,000. Just a couple more details. It spans 13 states, starts in Georgia at Springer Mountain, goes to Maine, and then In comparison to the other long distance trails like the PCT on the West Coast or the CDT, that's it kind of goes through, New Mexico and Colorado and all those. Anyway, the AT in comparison is ungraded and very rough. It's very, very rough terrain, walking on sharp rocks a lot of the time, lots of steep up and down, boulder scrambles, things like that. It goes through 2 different national parks, Smoky Mountains in Tennessee and Shenandoahs in Virginia. And Virginia, the Shenandoahs are very flat, so we definitely love that portion of the trail. The White Mountains of New Hampshire, very renowned for how strenuous those areas are. Virginia, another just a very beautiful area, wild ponies, very popular, spot on the AT. And then trail life, people are always asking, what do you do all the time? What's your life like? Blah, blah, blah. Well, we're always hitchhiking. That's one of the things. So that's a picture of me in New York City, just jokingly trying to get a hitchhike. And you meet some interesting characters hitchhiking. You have to do it very, very often. At least once a week, multiple, and a couple of times in that week. But you have to be smart about it. But people think that it's more dangerous than it is. But more often than not, you just get an amazing person to get a ride from. Hiker hunger. That's a picture of me eating some kind of mush slosh meal. But you're eating all the time. You're always hungry. When you get to town, man, you chow down. You find all the food that you can. Foot care, that you can see, that's a picture of me and several other hikers in Franklin, Tennessee, and we're all standing in the bathtub soaking our feet in Epsom salt and all that. And zeros, we get into town, or our bodies need rest, or we need to resupply, or for various reasons we might take a zero, which just means that we don't hike that day. We just take the day, rest, rejuvenate, do the chores that we need to do, laundry, things like that. So, more trail life. Talk about maintaining gear. So, we can see there on the far right. You can see on the far right that that's a broken trekking pole. You're always at risk of breaking gear, failing you, and that's why gear is so important. You want to make sure that you take care of it, and bike last. But sometimes things fail. Living in a tent or a hammock, just depending on what your style is. I was a hammock man. I wasn't one of those dirty ground dwellers. And but as you can see, that's my rain fly setup there in the bottom left, getting protected from the rain, which is the last point, which is battling the elements. The AT is infamously wet, and this year was infamously wet, and so lots and lots of rain. And these other 2 pictures in the middle, they're during a particularly rainy day. And you can see all of the clothes hanging and packs hanging, everything trying to dry out as much as possible, And we were very fortunate because this shelter was a quarter mile from a road, and we were also fortunate because there was service at that shelter. And we're fortunate also because there was a Domino's within delivering distance of that road. So we called them up and we're like, hey, would you bring some pizza to the road? We'll go meet you. And they were like, oh yeah, we've done this before, but definitely, we'll meet you over there. So that was really nice. That's our pizza haul. And yeah, excellent day. Some hiker traditions, trail names there on the bottom left. That's me and 3 other guys that I met at mile 30 and hiked with them essentially the entire way, the entire other, 2,100 miles all the way to get to Maine. And there's Twinkle Toes. That's the guy second to the left. His mom made us some bandanas with our names on them and stuff. And Voodoo, Twinkle Toes, Rambo, all kinds of different names. And someone gives you that name based on something that happens, or maybe a defining part about your character or something like that. So various reasons and stories why somebody might get a trail name, and it happens pretty early on normally, but there's people who don't get one until, the trail's, a quarter of the way done. Hike Naked Day, you can see that they're on the top, kind of in the middle. That yep, they do on the summer solstice every year. Everyone hikes naked for a period of time, however long they want to. It's more just for fun. There's the half-gallon challenge. That's in Pennsylvania, where you have to eat a half-gallon of ice cream. That's there in the top left. I did not attempt it because I figured, well, I could spend a bunch of money and hurt myself eating a half-gallon of ice cream, or I can eat a pint of ice cream and a cheeseburger, which was much more preferable. Jumping off various bridges. There's me jumping off of one. Pre-shelter confessions. All of the shelters. There's shelters, along the entire AT, and pre-shelter is just, they all have names. They all have logbooks, and so this one's cool because you write your trail sins, if you will, in the logbook. And anyway, that's another fun tradition. Trail Days is in Damascus, Virginia. That's on the picture on the right. And that's essentially like a big hiker festival, sort of. There's gear companies go and they sell gear. There's giveaways. There's raffles. And it's a big party, and it lasts all weekend. And we rented a big U-Haul and packed all the hikers in the back that we could, and drove back down to Damascus because we'd gotten past it. But very, very fun. And then there's another place called the Cookie Lady. They have a blueberry farm. You go pick all the blueberries that you can eat. And they feed you cookies. And you get something and charge your stuff up. So very, very nice. And then very key part of through hiking is trail magic and trail angels. So trail angels are people that do trail magic. And trail angels normally is someone who has some kind of tie to the trail or a trail, in the sense that either they through hike themselves, or they have family that through hiked, or some kind of connection. Maybe they're volunteers for the trail for whatever reason. And trail magic can come in so many different ways. It can be just getting a ride from somebody. It can be getting food or water that you don't have to filter, because that can become quite the chore every day, all day. Food, treats, sodas. Trail magic can be a huge setup, with hot food, or it could be just a really small cooler on the side of the road as you cross the road, to go back into the woods. A lot of times you'll get free place to stay. This guy on the far right, the older foot gentleman, his name is like 1985. This was in Pennsylvania, and he connected with us on the Facebook group and invited us to stay at his dairy farm. And we built a teepee and milked his cows and hung out with him, took a zero there, just like such a blessing. And the fellow in the middle, this was on my first really, really, really cold, rainy day in March. This was like day 2 or so, or day 3. And he was giving out hot drinks and shelter for the day. His name is Why Not 2K. He's through hiked a couple of times, and I think he in the 90s or 80s or so. And then this group on the far left, they had a huge spread. None of them had really had a tie to trail. They just kind of heard that people did this and decided that they wanted to do it themselves, and wanted to kind of put themselves into the culture and just be nice, and give people things when that need them, and are hungry. And but yeah, that was a lovely group of folks that had quite the spread. But we will do shower and laundry if they give you a place to stay and all that. Crucial part of trail. Obviously, living out in the woods for 6 months, walking and hiking and doing all of that, you learn a few things that you can apply to the rest of your life. And number one for me was confidence. I needed a boost of confidence. I feel when I started the trail, and so I mean, if you can hike from Georgia-to-Maine, what can't you do? You can think, well, why can't I start a business? Why can't I do X, Y, and Z? And so it encourages you to challenge yourself and do more and push yourself out of your comfort zone and really just refine your mental attitude. Number 2 was just urgency of life. You realize that life is short and life is fragile, and that, I mean, live life to the fullest, go out and do cool things. Next is love and service, and you meet such a diverse group of people out in the woods, and they all are different, come from different backgrounds or careers, different ages, anywhere from 84, the guy who threw hike this year, sorry about the big truck, to, oh my gosh, kids that are like 5 years old, you know, with hugely diverse groups of people, different experiences and backgrounds, and just learning how to interact with those kind of people, getting out of the bubble that you're used to, and being able to love those people more genuinely, and serve them because you've been served so much and you can give that back in some kind of way. And you learn that people are your greatest resource. You're living out of a bag, and say you don't have, you know, say you get cut or something and you don't have a bandage, or, you know, any number of things. And there's always people there that are wanting to help you, you know, and just going back to serving others. And then curiosity, just being curious, you know, again, stepping out of your comfort zone, and learning new things and trying new things. So learning about your surroundings, you know, learning that all of this nature, all of these cool things around us, like the quote that, you know, Aunt Paige mentioned earlier, you know, all of these things, they're here to serve us, but we should serve them. We should be good stewards of nature and the things around us. And it should be cherished, but it should also be protected, you know, and it's, in learning about it can be quite beneficial to you, as you'll see here in the next slides, because you're spending so much time in nature, you're learning, and it gives you something to do, you know, it gives you the ability to, you know, not just kind of turn your brain off or listen to music, but you can rather look at your surroundings and be learning, oh, this can feed me, oh, this can heal me, okay, this could kill me, you know, learning all that different stuff. And so you can supplement your diet, you get a deeper connection with the trail and with your surroundings, and, you know, giving us something to do. And so pictured here, obviously those are blackberries on the left, and then the next, that's a porcini mushroom, which is a Boletus edulis. You learn all kinds of mushrooms out there. Chanterelle, which is next to the porcini, and then that's just another through hiker. Her name's Tater Tot, and she's precious, and that's just her holding a thumb. There on the very bottom, you can see a list of just some of the things that you learn about and walk by every day. It's porcinis, black trumpets, another kind of mushroom, turkey tail, a very medicinal mushroom that's good for your digestive system, has tons of anti-cancer properties. Cranberries, alpine cranberries, cherries, especially in Pennsylvania, morels early on in the spring, raspberries, garlic mustard, a very nice leafy green. During lunch, you're making these tuna wraps, and you can only eat so many tuna wraps before you're like, okay, I'm not eating another single tuna wrap. But you can at least supplement that, and kind of almost like, you know, putting lettuce in it, where it's, you know, this like garlicky, mustardy, leafy green. So, you know, very nice. Spice up your life a bit, you know. Chanterelles, mints, various kinds of mints to put in your water, you know, a little flavor. Puffballs, another kind of edible mushroom. Rose hips, chicken of the woods, all kinds of things. But most importantly, all over the trail, blueberries, tons and tons and tons of blueberries. And oh my gosh, so nice. I love it. So why would somebody do this? Why would you choose to live in the woods for 6 months and hike all day, and, you know, and break your body down and all that? And first would be the personal challenge. You know, you have that, you know, extreme internal growth where, you know, you're gaining that confidence, you're learning lessons, and you're seeking discomfort. You know, you're living out of this bag. One set of clothes for hiking, one set of clothes for sleeping, and that's for 6 months long. You know, I had the same pair of shorts for 6 months, and they eventually turned into a kilt because of how, you know, how much use they saw. It's always good to push yourself. So just the innate health benefits of that, weight loss. I've lost probably 30 pounds or so on the trail. I was a bit of a thicky boy before, and now I'm pretty skinny. But and then you muscle strengthening, all of that, and experiencing nature, like we talked about, just getting a deeper appreciation and deeper connection with our surroundings. getting that immediate gratification that you get from, you know, summiting a mountain, and then kind of knowing that you got to go straight down and do another one, but you know, you get to experience that beauty, you know, and how great that is, and then, you know, learning about our surroundings and how they can benefit us, and experiencing life. You know, it's okay to shirk off material things. I'm not saying that you have to, you know, but it's good. It's good to push yourself to do that. You know, there's so much less of this out on trail. You know, nobody's on their phone all the time. You know, they're interacting, and so you have this deeper connection that is just sometimes lost today. And so you get to live life radically and extremely, meet and grow with different groups of people, very diverse people. And then it just boils down to trail life is simplified to food, water, shelter, and real human connection. So for those of you who might want to get into backpacking, if that's something that you might want, you know, you might be interested, we can sit and talk gear for hours. And, you know, I won't subject you to that. But it's easy to educate yourself. You know, you can find nearby places to hike on, things like all trails or gut hooks, and then you can just Google it. You know, there's all kinds of places near Atlanta. You know, there's Tennessee and North Carolina. They're gorgeous. There's the Pinhoti Trail and down in Alabama. There's the Chattahoochee. There's trails around there, around Atlanta. You know, there's all kinds of. You just Google it. You know. And then learning about gear that'll work best for you. You know, people start the trail and they have a piece of gear that they think is perfect and that they're never going to change it. Sometimes you have to change things. You know, sometimes things don't work for you and whatnot. And it's really easy to start inexpensively. You know, you don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars, you know, on gear that you may not end up using. You know, you definitely don't want to do that. And it's so easy just to YouTube different folks. You know, there's Darwin on the Trail. He's a good resource. There's Dixie, Homemade Wanderlust. I've heard about her as well. But I mean, you can just learn, ask people that you meet, you know, who do this thing, you know, and you can learn about gear and different logistical things from those kind of resources. And then next is understanding your limits. So, I mean, you obviously don't want to bite off more than you can chew. You want to know that your body is more resilient than you think, and that you can do more than you expect, but you also want to start small. So, you know, don't be like, I'm going to go hike. I'm going to, you know, thousands. I mean, some people do. I don't know how they do it, but starting small, you know, you're doing an 8-mile day, and then, you know, having your options to be able to stop earlier, you know, knowing that you have resources that are available to you, inviting friends to join you, but also knowing that you don't necessarily have to go out there with people. I started alone. So many people start alone, and but you meet so many cool people, and just taking note that the biggest mountain to climb is the one between your ears. So, you know, that mental fortitude, you know, and then just going and doing it, go stomping. You know, experience is the best teacher. And trial and error, you know, that helps you figure out what's going to work for you and what's not going to. You know, that process was going on for me for years, you know, thinking, oh, this piece of gear is going to work. And then I got it and I was like, you know, I'm not so sure. And I'm still doing that. And even after through hiking, you're still doing that, you know, so that process never ends. And, you know, there are through hikers that, I mean, their first night backpacking and their first night camping, period, is at Springer Mountain, which is just mind blowing to me. But it just goes to show that those people did it. You know, they finished it, and you know that's more than possible. So common questions that you get, you know, did you carry a gun? How else do you protect yourself? I mean, no, you see bears, some, you know, but they you just say bear, they run off. No need to carry a gun. And people ask, what about crazy people in the woods? And all of the craziest experiences I have were in towns, you know, not in the woods. And then newsflash, the people that are through hiking, we are the crazy people in the woods. So how'd you carry enough food for 6 months? You pass towns, you know, every 3 to 5 days, give or take. And you just get a hitch or a shuttle into town. Sometimes the trail just goes literally right through the town, and you resupply there. Don't necessarily live off the land. You can supplement though. And yes, you start by yourself. A lot of people, some people start with a partner or a spouse or a friend, you know, and sometimes they stay together, sometimes they don't. You know, that's just the way it is. You don't really get scared or lonely, you know, because there's just so many people out there, especially on this trail. It's so well trafficked. What do you sleep in? You know, I slept in a hammock. That's when you can kind of see my hammock shadow through that rain fly. And so that's kind of the setup I use. We get people to use tents. There's so many different kinds of tents you can use. All the time. We just sat around, ate food, and talked to each other. You know, that's what we did. We talked, we just live life together. And what do you do if it rains? It's bad. You get in your shelter, or you get in a shelter, or you go into town if it's going to be really, really bad, or like a hostel or something like that. So there's definitely ways to avoid that. But I mean, the fact remains that you do hit bad weather, and that's okay, you know, and sometimes you just got to kind of suck it up. And up next, I heard this quote a while back: there's no such thing as bad weather, just inadequate gear and bad attitudes. And that's a picture in the White Mountains about to go up in Washington. And just warning about how bad the weather can get, especially up there. And that is it. What kind of questions do you guys have for me? These pictures, this is the White Mountains, and then those are the stars, the Milky Way that I took with my phone, and you can believe it, in Maine, just how brutal it is. And it's so gorgeous. You can see the stars so well. But anyway, no, what are y'all's questions? What do you have for me?
Well, thanks, Luke. If you want to stop sharing your screen for a minute so I can see people to call on them, that would be great. So questions, I've got one to start off. Just what has been the toughest thing about readjusting to life off the trail?
Yes, people do talk about the post-trail depression quite a lot. They talk about coming home. The hardest part about readjusting is just having to reformulate your mind that the world does not work the way that it works out in the woods, and that, I mean, that's okay. That there's things that you can still do to be a part of that lifestyle, maybe to still be adventuresome, but still, you know, work and have a job and have those, be an adult, you know, have those adult responsibilities. So just kind of having that mental block and having to kind of hammer that into your mind that, I mean, that's okay. That, I mean, living out in the woods is really nice, and that it'll still be there, you know, but, you know, there are responsibilities and things that you still need to do, you know. I think you're muted.
Other questions? And just FYI, at some point I'm going to let Jared introduce his dad, Don, who is on the call. So we've now figured out who Don Evans is. But Francis, Miss Francis.
Look, what's the difference in your weight from when you started the hike and getting back?
I believe that I started the trail around 210 pounds, somewhere around there. And then I think that at my lowest point on trail, I was around 170. Maybe now I'm around 175, 180. So, you know, I lost anywhere between 30 and 40 pounds, you know, so quite a lot. And I mean, and a lot of women, you know, they don't really lose that much weight. They gain so much muscle weight, you know, so it's different from that. But your legs get so much bigger. I was a football lineman, you know, in high school, and I thought that I had big legs before, but I saw the picture of my first day on trail, and the difference in just my calves, you know, I mean, is huge. But yeah, you gain a lot of muscle weight, but you lose a lot of fat weight. Yes, Marilyn?
Yes, you answered part of the question, but I want to know, did you see any major difference between men and women in terms of finishing the trail or experiences, getting sick, losing too much weight or gaining or whatever?
Right. Not necessarily. There were lots of women that we through hiked with, and you know, like I said, they their weight fluctuation was not necessarily in number, just in losing weight. But I didn't really see many people get sick. The only people that I saw get really sick were myself and one other hiker named Voodoo, who was pictured earlier. But the biggest difference is diet. People just eat different things. But I mean, generally speaking, I mean, same, similar experiences. Sometimes we would joke that the ladies would get hitches much faster than the guys would, because the guys are ugly and gross. But
you put the women out there with the thumb, huh?
That's right. Well, that's what we would do. All the guys would stay hiding in the woods, and we'd send the ladies out, one or two of them, and then a truck or someone would pull over, and then all of these nasty guys would come walking out of the woods and be like, surprise.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hey, Luke, it's Kevin. Great presentation.
Thank you.
I know you mentioned that during the whole pandemic has kind of gotten people interested in being out and hiking and everything. Is that still going on, where people have an interest in going? And if that interest is strong, are people being very, I guess, protective of the surroundings along the trail?
Do you mean just like as it directly relates to COVID?
Yes.
Last year, I believe that it was it was much more of a concern. And the ATC, I mean, officially said don't. But I met people last year who were like doing trail. I mean, met people this year who hiked last year, and they just kind of went against the wishes of the ATC with, kind of with the logic that I'm living out in the wilderness with such a small group of people, and I'm living day in and day out with this group of people because they are like my family. And so they justified it that way. And you still had to go into towns. And earlier on, because you're starting in March, or April, and then by the tail end of the trail, things had gotten better. People weren't so in towns and things. People were more friendly to hikers, but towards the beginning, there was a little bit of, hey, you've been told not to be out here, and they, had their own justification, and that's just their personal choice. But as far as people, I mean, I never heard of anyone getting COVID out, that was through hiking. It seems to me like you'd want to encourage that, to go live out in the woods. And I mean, I think the ATC did close down shelters officially and put locks on privies, or just bar them up to really discourage people from using them, But this year it was essentially non-existent.
Excellent. Thank you.
Aaron, I think you've got a question.
Who said? Is it?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining us. I enjoyed the talk a lot. Were there any love connections out there on the trail? Did you witness some romance and people finding each other?
Yes, there was. Not for me, unfortunately, but there was Twinkle Toes, the guy in the picture earlier. He met a girl. Her name was DJ Moss, and they really fell in love on trail. And now he lives in Atlanta. At least now he's working with a nonprofit, and she lives in Louisiana, in I think near New Orleans. And they're moving in together. And I mean, I don't know if they're having marriage talks, but I mean, I don't know if that's their if that's what they want. But I don't know for sure. There was definitely some deep connections where people found a close significant other. Yeah, which is pretty
That's
neat.
great.
That'd have been nice.
If you were going to recommend one section for a section hike or a short hike, where would you recommend?
Nearby Atlanta, for sure would recommend Grayson Highlands, and that's kind of near Atlanta. I think it's probably around like 5 or 8 hour drive, somewhere in there. but oh, so gorgeous. You have just the most amazing balds walking over. There's wild ponies. I didn't put any pictures in there of the wild ponies, but I mean, they just come up and lick you, and oh, it's so cool. But yeah, Grayson Highlands in Virginia. There's also what they call the Virginia Triple Crown, which is McAfee Knob, which is, very, very you can Google pictures of McAfee Knob. It's very photogenic, very famous AT pop spot, but that's not it. There's also Dragon's Tooth and Tinker Cliffs, which Tinker Cliffs is arguably my absolute favorite part of the whole trail. And those all three there are very, very close together. So I would recommend those. But I mean, anywhere in North Georgia, in the North Georgia mountains, you can go hike Blood Mountain. That's very close by, and that's the highest point on the AT in Georgia. I did that hike prior to doing the AT. It's strenuous, but it's gorgeous. Yeah, there's lots of options for shorter hikes around. Just be prepared to take your time, because some of the prettiest spots that you gotta fight for them. I mean, Blood Mountain is a bit of a bit of a climb, but if you start in the morning, it's only like 2 miles or so, and I mean it's worth it.
All right. Well, you've got some uncles who are going to be picking your brain on that. So,
Right.
Francis, you've got another question?
Look,
Yeah.
did you take any disposable equipment, and what kind of constraints were involved for you to not litter?
To not litter. Yeah. So on the trail, there's leave no trace. That's, everyone talks about leave no trace, leave no trace. So, I mean, when you do your business in the morning, then you dig a hole in the ground, you carry a little trowel and bury it, but that's pretty much the only thing you bury. You pack out everything, you pack out all your trash, all the trash that you accumulate, the food that you carry, then you just put it in a civic bag, and you get it down, you just dump it, So those were pretty much the only disposable things. Every other piece of gear essentially is crucial, and has a job. And I mean, outside of like some really, really basic first aid, stuff, that essentially was it. But yeah, nobody's throwing trash in the woods. I mean, at least I don't know any thru hikers that were, throwing trash in the woods. I mean, there were day hikers and section hikers that would, they just hadn't been educated on those principles. Tenets of leave no trace. And so, I mean, it's important to know that, because it's kind of stinky when you're walking through the woods and you see somebody's trash, So most of us would we've already got trash, so I mean, it's no skin off our backs. Did that answer your question?
All right. Any final questions for Luke? Well, Luke, thank you so much as your aunt and on behalf of our Rotary Club for taking time out from your trip to Oklahoma to talk to us today. This was just really so exciting and so interesting. So in your honor today, our club is going to make a donation toward Rotary's efforts to end polio in the world. We've been working on it for decades. We're getting very close. And so we'll make a donation in your honor today for speaking to us. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much. And I will say, if anyone has more questions or backpacking stuff, ask Paige, and for my contact information, you can get my phone number, shoot me a text, shoot me a call, whatever. I'm an open book, I can answer any of your questions to the best of my ability.
Yep, I will always know where to find Luke.